and good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Yofai Korem. I'm the CEO of Cyberint. In today's session, I'd like to take you through the journey we've done in Cyberint and hopefully with some of our customers toward impactful intelligence. It will try to cover different areas of how, what is impactful intelligence, what are the risks that it's trying to help with, and some key elements or key tools that you could take into your organization. But first, if you don't know Cyberint, just one slide about Cyberint. We are 130 experts. Actually, today we crossed this number with offices from the US all the way to Singapore, covering organizations in multi-verticals and multiple sides with our technology named Argos. And our managed services, a team of experts, helps to verify that Argos, our technology, is becoming with the highest value possible. So this was about Cyberint. Maybe we'll cover some more elements later. But now let's maybe try to, as we initiate the session, to remind ourselves, as we finish 2022, what are the main cyber threats that we're handling, and later, of course, we'll try to relate that to the impactful intelligence. So today, and I'm referring to, there are a few surveys I will quote here. The first one will be Gartner. So we see the top trends in cybersecurity today are related to the number one, to the attack surface expansion. It's not surprising, as people post-COVID use more the cloud and working from home and using more suppliers and SaaS products in order to make their job more efficient. So the previous task of identifying what you have in order to protect it is becoming more and more complex, as your attack surface is becoming wider and harder to manage and predict. The second challenge, or the second trend, is the fact that we need to protect our identity. Our identity is becoming very complex to manage. People have login interface today to dozens of, or not hundreds of systems, and many username and passwords. And of course, applying MFA and other identity protection systems is a top priority for organizations for a good reason. We'll see some of that later on. Another big problem is the digital supply chain. How do we handle this risk? And we'll see in a minute that it has a main impact today. And like this, I think, is a continuous trend from previous years, is the need to have a vendor consolidation, meaning you cannot have 100 different tools and products within your organization, verify that all your cybersecurity professionals will know how to use them, each of them covering a small element. You need to have to try to achieve vendor consolidation, where one vendor can provide answers to multiple problems you try to solve before with multiple tools. These are the top four. And if we look at another survey, in this case, the Verizon Breach Report, when we analyze how attacks happen today, and this is the coming back to some of the trends that Gartner presented, we see that while we tend to focus, and I'm reading, while we tend to focus on the advanced threat, most organizations are more likely to face opportunistic attacks. These will typically leverage the path of least resistance, which is often a window left open. So this tells us that actually a majority of the breaches that are occurring here are occurring due to human element that made a mistake or was involved in that, and 13%, which is quite a lot, is just a result of a mistake. Now, if I'm connecting to this to the next one, which is the supply chain, again, the technologies that we're using and the suppliers that we are allowing to enter into our organization, either as people or technology, 62% of those, the supply chain was responsible for 62% of the intrusion last year. And this is one of the main ways threat actors are looking at. There's a general question of what is the supply chain risk? Who is my supplier in digital world? Is DocuSign is a supplier if I'm using it? Of course, yes. Who else would be considered a supplier? And what is the effective method of tracking those suppliers? I think it's becoming a more and more complex question to answer. So we covered shortly the fact that human errors, expanding attack surface, is becoming a real problem. And it's not always the 0 days and the nation level state actors that one need to be worried from. It is the internal employee that makes a simple mistake, leaving a window open for the attacker to get in. So far, I think it's just as a reminder for Cybersecurity 101 for end of 2022. Now, Cyberint tries to achieve or want to walk you through the journey of what is impactful intelligence. And let me initiate this discussion by defining what is impactful intelligence. In intelligence, and this is my profession for more than 20 years now, there are actually three layers that I would like to remind us. The first layer in intelligence, and it is related to any intelligence, the cybersecurity or other type of intelligence, business intelligence, etc. There are three layers. The first layer is about data collection. In our world of cybersecurity, this could be what threat actors communication channel are using, what Telegram groups are being should be monitored, what are the TTPs, the tactics they are using, what tools they are using. These are types of elements that should be defined in a data collection plan. Data collection is very complex, requires a lot of usually technological aspects, maybe also human aspects. So I want to be in a discussion with a threat actor in order to identify what targets he's going after. This is all type of data collection, very sophisticated and professional line of business. The result of the data collection, though, is then being aggregated, coming from different sources, from different tools, from different people, into the next layer in intelligence, which is the analysis and following the conclusion. So from the fact that we see the North Koreans now using specific tools or changing how they use cryptocurrency, the conclusion should be whatever the conclusion is, right? So we need to analyze the information. Sometimes the very simple analysis and a very simple conclusion. Sometimes the analysis is very complex and requires a comprehensive team effort, multi-language, multi-layers in order to come to the conclusion. The conclusion is that attacks could come from here or that the risk is there. Great. So this is the second layer, analysis and conclusion. The third one, and this conclusion is then being disseminated. The third most critical layer in intelligence is the impact. Impact meaning that the analysis and the conclusion coming from the data collection is disseminated to the relevant decision makers that consume the intelligence. And due to this intelligence, the intelligence makes an impact. Its impact is changing the current behavior of the organization, meaning if so far we act in a certain way, due to the intelligence we received, the behavior is going to be changed and we're going to do things in a different way or do different things. If, by the way, if continuously the intelligence after disseminated is not making an impact, is not changing, then there is a question, why do we need this intelligence? And I think this is the main questions we're trying to answer here. So let me put it maybe into more, maybe a clear definition. So for our perspective, impactful intelligence means the ability or change in behavior in your organization that helps to contain, remediate, or reduce the risk. In order for this intelligence to be impactful, it needs to have four elements. The first element, it needs to be accurate. The presentation is stuck for some reason. Here we go. The intelligence to be accurate, meaning whatever was reported is truthful. It is the right information and it's not something that didn't happen. The second thing, it needs to be relevant. So information that is considered impactful is relevant because it impacts my organization directly. It is not something that is happening to another nation or another company, then it will not be defined as impactful. The third layer is actionable. There is actually something I can do about it. If it is FYI, only for your information, and there's nothing we can do around it, what's the point? So actionable means there's something I can do about it. And the fourth layer, it is cost-effective remediation. It means that the cost of the risk is actually higher than the cost of detecting and mitigating it. Otherwise, again, there's no point of investing efforts to collect, analyze, and report related to this one. So accurate, relevant, actionable, and cost-effective remediation. When we look at intelligence, we look through this prism, and we want to validate that all four actually exist. Now, let me take you into a different dimension of what is impactful intelligence. And Let me again define two areas. One is threats, and the second one are assets. So assets, this will be the servers, the people, the brands, the web pages, the technologies, the partners of any organization. The second one, threat. Threat will be actors, TTPs, and maybe let's take into a specific example. In Cyberint, we track continuously different threat groups, different new tools, different communication channels, and we actually published. This is a screenshot I took earlier today from our blog in our website, and you can see ability to give different coverage on the ransomware activity, on specific vulnerabilities, and other elements that are related. Maybe one of the most interesting one will be Lockbit as an example for a threat group. So when we talked about, if you remember on the left-hand side, we talked about the threat. Here is how a specific threat looks like. Let's talk about a specific attack group. Let's take Lockbit. Lockbit, which is the leader today in ransomware activity. So far in 2022, until end of Q3, had 643 victims, which is a big rise over last year. We see they are doing, very interesting PR investments. They are interviewing to the press about their hacks. They even did a PR campaign by inviting people to receive $1,000 if they tattoo Lockbit logo and name on their body. We see that there was a very successful PR campaign. Actually, they had to shut it down due to too many people tattooing, and they have to give away too much money. I don't want to show you my shoulder if I have this tattoo or not, but you can imagine that this is a way to get their name out there as part of a quite unique activity of a threat group that is focusing on ransomware. By the way, they are so good as an organization, they actually gave a reward for bug bounty program. They actually encourage people to look for vulnerabilities and bugs in their encryption software and management software, and they claim to actually provide $50,000 for someone who found a vulnerability in their system. They continually improve their encryption mechanism. We can tell you very clearly that the way they encrypt today is different than a few months ago in order to try to evade better antiviruses and EDR. They do it by encrypting only part of the file. It still not uses the file after this encryption technique is useless, but it makes the encryption much faster and much harder to detect. We identified a specific leak of some of the code, which is called Lockbit 3.0 leak, that is being used now by a different threat actor. And we can even see some retaliation in form of DDoS attack against this group. So here you can see a specific example when we dive into a specific threat. Okay, so it's critical to know the threat, to understand how they work, what are the techniques, what people are behind them, what is the motivation, etc., etc. This is an example. Actually, in order to achieve this type of information to this deep level, you need to be in constant discussion in threat groups. Here you can see something very, very unique. We didn't see it, in previous years that I worked in intelligence, where the threat actors themselves that we track and analyze and report to the community about is actually giving us some feedback. So you can see Atlas Group suggesting that they liked our report and they shared it, as well as GhostTech and Aggressive Griffin. These are all feedback coming from the threat actors, meaning a good intelligence company needs to be able to collect information, analyze it, and disseminate it, as we said, in order to verify this information is getting to the right people. So threat, I'm summarizing this point here. You need to understand the threat, and here I gave several details and example about threats and how we collect them. Another type of thing that is related to the assets and the threat is, for example, CVEs, vulnerabilities. There are thousands of vulnerabilities published, and they are becoming a threat as well, because this is a bug or problem that someone can actually use. The question out of those vulnerabilities, which one is actually impactful, right? Which is related to me, which is true, which is I can do something about it, where the cost is, as we said, is higher, the risk is higher cost. And some of those questions will be, is those vulnerabilities, any threat actor, any hacker actually uses them? Is there any exploitation, any key that is allowing hackers to use the vulnerability to move to the next stage in the attack? And here you can see one of the models in Argos, in our product, that allows to give specific indication about the relevant chatter in forums, in code repositories, etc., related to a specific vulnerability, in this case related to VMware, and Cyberint 4 about its criticality, which is, of course, could be related, more up to date and different from the regular CVSS or NVD score. How do we get to this CVEs? It is a result of continuous collection. I just want to explain what when we say collection in cyber intelligence, what it means. It means to be able to identify exploits and darknet and chatter and paste types and malware tools and code repositories, etc. Use our research team in order to process the information and analyze it, as well as looking at different public repositories, and then coming up with a very specific list of recommendations that are able to be consumed through our portal, a browser extension, or through an API in order to make something with it. Okay, so I'm summarizing this point. This is all about threats. So we have threats and we have the assets. Now, the interesting point where we move into our journey in impactful intelligence is actually this area over here. Threats in general create FUD. FUD is the acronym for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So threats are worrying. Lockbit, wow, it's the twos, and it's worrying. We should be worried about it, or shouldn't we? So this is the challenge with threats. They're all worrying. Which one is related to me? They're making a very great dinner conversation or even webinars. We can talk about them. But again, is it something that I should be really planning in order to reduce those threats? On the other side, we have the assets. How many assets do we have? How many web services? How many IPs? How many partners? How many assets? What are the assets? It's very hard to chase over all of those assets. And once you found them, to identify whether they need some kind of an upgrade or a patch, which leads to what we call the inefficient patrolling fatigue, the ability or the need or the desire to go and find all of those assets and check, and the endless race to verify they're up to date. We think that the relevant information, the relevant area we should look at here is this correlation between the threat and the asset. From our perspective, this is the high impact zone. This is the zone that we should actually focus at, and maybe less put our attention into the other areas in the red and the blue circle. And this is not so easy, because what is this high impact zone and how we detect it? There are two challenges here. One, our assets are highly volatile. They're changing continuously. An IP that we use today is not the IP we use tomorrow. A partner that we use today could be changed tomorrow, as well as our own employees. So highly volatile, and this means that you need an ability to continuously and ongoingly discover and have an effective asset tracking system or program in order to identify what are your assets. Big challenge, and you need to think of how you solve it. The second problem are the other side, the threat. The threats are also highly volatile. Lockbit is the winner today. Just a few months ago, there was another ransomware group that was even more successful, Conti, and they disappeared, and maybe other people coming instead of them. Which Telegram channels and which marketplaces in the dark web are where the information of this is changing, because threat actors are changing the methods and the tools and the places they work. So this is also highly volatile. And in order to be able to handle this, you need to have an ongoing and automated source discovery. We believe it's a key. So you're continuously tracking, just like a radar when a plane is moving. There's a way to continuously see where the threat actors are and verify that the microphone, to see what they're talking about, in a metaphorical way, is moving with them. This is a part of the challenge, which is not easy to solve. And of course, when you look at how to understand threat, you need to verify there is an ongoing and automated source discovery as a key. Now, we had this impact zone, right? I want to show some examples of what it means to be in the high impact zone. And the first case I will use is an exposed AWS bucket. These are true cases. In this case, it's coming from an insurance provider. And this insurance provider used AWS, Amazon Web Services, in order to store data in a bucket in S3, like the new version of FTP. I think everyone aware of it today. And like we said in the beginning, human error led to a misconfiguration, allowing different people that are not only where the company intended to have access to specific, what we believe should have been internal repositories of the organization. So those are the assets that are exposed to the risk. When we say information exposed, we talk about, and of course we try to censor here due to this format, the information. We are talking about specific, very detailed database and archives of claims and users and other things that, of course, are very, very critical. And if we zoom even further into one of those files, we can see a full structure of, of the details of the customers and their claims and other information that you don't want to have access to people that are not part of the organization. Not even all of them in the organization should have access to this information. Definitely not a threat actor. The exposure like that could, actually ruin a company from a regulatory perspective, reputation perspective, etc. So this is one example where the risk or the asset meets the risk, and we are in the high impact zone. Of course, it could be remedied, so it's accurate. It is related to me, to this organization. It's actionable. You can fix it, and it's in this case quite easy to fix it. Once you change the configuration permission, you're getting to a position where the access is denied, and this data is not exposed anywhere to the outside. So one example. Another example of things that are happening in the high impact zone are, in this case, a retail company that had a website or that has, a web-based system with a login page, which is exposed to the outside. Again, misconfiguration or missing knowledge led to the fact there is directory listing enabled in this website, allowing anyone to browse through the internal content of the website, not only what was exposed to the outside and planned by the developers of the system. The information that was exposed actually contained very sensitive information, and as we zoom in into this to those files, we can see secrets or passwords, private keys, secrets that are related to ability to connect to different databases and to different systems that that are critical to the organization. So not only you can get into the files of the web server, you can also continue and execute a lateral movement using the information that is there. You can see additional example of username, passwords, databases, and other secret keys and interconnectivity potentially with other suppliers or partners that are related to this organization, making this organization not only a key target themselves, but also potentially an ability to move from that to other organizations, other subsidiaries, other partners that are connected to them. So very, very critical information. Again, in this case, the information is collected, aggregated. The conclusion is that there is a severe data leakage risk here. Here you can see an example of Argos, our system, and how it is delivering this alert to the relevant organization. And of course, it's actionable, and the cost of remediation, again, is very, very small. In this case, again, fixing the configuration and post-mitigation, no one is able to access this information anymore. I want maybe to show another case of the connection between risks and the assets. And let's take Uber Bridge. It was discussed, so I'll remind quickly. In this case, and here we see a chat or a discussion between the threat actors themselves describe the way they were able to access Uber. And you can see they were able to use corkuber.com and access to an employee, and from there were able to get into the organization. Actually, a very good company has provided a suggestion of exactly the step-by-step illustration. So Cyberark suggested of how this happened. So the adversary was able to receive confidential access, and they were able to bypass the MFA with the MFA spam. And following this attack, so they were able to buy credentials on the dark web, again, the risk, right? And they were able to find those credentials, bypass the MFA, And from there, they are inside the organization, uh, luckily finding different details that allow them to access very sensitive information. The most critical area, of course, is this adversary able to identify credentials in the darknet. Now, here is an example. This is, again, coming from our system, ability to identify the information being sold in the darknet to, in this case, Uber, again, uber1login.com, with the username and password. Actually, if Uber would have the right information, the impactful intelligence in time, they could identify that this information is being sold. $10 usually is the price, and they could have had an impactful result by changing the password, for example. But they were not aware, so the hacker was able to gain access to Uber, and from there, through the different stages, come into a position they were actually able to get to the EDR system, Sentinel-1 here, and actually from Sentinel-1 system disseminate or control the entire EDR and AV activities of the organization. So go back to the question of what are the risks. The risk is an employee that works from home, maybe home computer, which is also an asset, and the risk is also threat actors trying to use different information stealers to collect those credentials. Knowing this would focus the organization on the higher impact zone, potentially preventing this type. By the way, there are additional credentials being offered even today on the dark web related to Uber and actually in thousands of different organizations. So going back to our definition, we are looking at the high impact zone, which is the combination between assets and the threat. And even there, we see different challenges. So the challenges, the first one will be triaging. So there's so much information, even if in this high impact zone. And for some company, the high impact zone could be a quite wide one. So we need to identify which assets are actually relevant, which to triage, which conclusions should actually be disseminated to make the impact. So we understand that our customers do not have a lot of time. We actually try to verify that what we create the outcome of the triaging is, from 10 to I don't know, 30 minutes a day for some cases, and not more, because people are busy. So it's very important to verify that triaging is effective, allowing you to prioritize. Today, most of the people are busy. We need to define what we actually do. What is the exposure? What are the threats? What are the assets that are critical? And what is the business impact? This will lead to how we define the priority of the problems that we try to solve, and verify that these are the one that should be invested the time and money and resources. And last one is mitigate. Of course, there's no point of issuing an alert of something that is in the high impact zone if there is no ability to mitigate. Actually, from Cyberint perspective, a problem that we reported that was not mitigated, we consider it is our problem, because either it should not have been reported from the first place, or the customer do not fully understand the impact and thus didn't prioritize it correctly. And we, as a KPI, as part of my recommendation for usage of impactful intelligence, is to track the amount of false positives. In Cyberint, I would say in the last few months, we are less than 7% overall of everything we report. And which I think is a good number, because within 10 alerts, less than one would be one that is not related to the organization. And I would recommend, again, going back, I would recommend to track those as a KPI, those alerts that are not being mitigated, and ask ourselves why. And maybe if we fix we've solved the question, why? Because I'm not interested in this. I don't consider it a threat. This is not my asset, etc. If we look back those answers, we can tune the intelligence to be even more and more and more impactful as the organization, of course, changes, as the threat and the assets are continuing to be moving around as we saw before. Great. So maybe another perspective I would recommend. So one question is you should ask yourself, how targeted are you? And another question, which is maybe easier to answer, is how exposed are you? Because it's related to you and not to the hackers that you don't talk to every day. And I think our goal for most organizations is to verify that you reduce those, and you reduce those by verifying that you know your partners, you know your customers, you know your employees, you know your assets, you know your risks, and you reduce the exposure. Potentially, if this exposure is reduced, the threat actors are also less targeting you. So there is a correlation from our experience between the level of exposure and the level of targeting we see from threat actors. So try to reduce the exposure, you try to reduce also you reduce also the target level. So if I sum this point, let's define what Cyberint mission statement here, and we go back to how we execute and implement the impactful intelligence process. So Cyberint mission statement is to positively impact organization, reduce risk exposure, and improve the decision making through native fusion of attack surface management and threat intelligence. So if we go to any organization, the organization, in order to do digital business today, must have, has data that is sensitive, from credentials and business information and other things. But potentially this data could be exposed to the outside through social media, our web systems, our customers that work from, their home machine, logging into our applications, developer environments of our own employees or subcontractors, employees working from home, et cetera, et cetera. So this is digital surfaces as we have it today in the end of 2022. On the other side, there are the threat actors. There are different types of threat actors. So a few of them, many of them are financially motivated. Some do hack for fun, because not all hackers know to do everything. Everything I mean by identifying potential windows to enter through, having the right develop and configure the right attack tools, execute those attacks, or the fourth area will be taking the result of the attack and how to monetize it, how to take Bitcoin that he received from the victim and process into actual dollars. These are not those actions. Not all threat actors know to do it. So there are professions in threat actors, and they communicate and buy and sell and merchant between themselves. And with this combined capabilities, they will go and execute attacks on one of those interfaces I presented in a minute ago. What Cyberint is trying to do here is, we are located outside the organization. We don't need any installation or integration or prior knowledge. And we're doing two main things. One, from the outside, we try to identify what is the organization, what are the digital assets from different, as we defined assets before. This is a very big challenge for many organizations, both small and large, to identify what are the assets they need to protect. So this is the first thing we're doing. And then, of course, continually scanning those assets in order to identify any misconfigurations, any errors, any windows that the hacker that were left open for the hacker. We then take this organization, the definition of the organization through the prisma of what it is its asset, and we compare it against the risks, right? Against the open, deep, and dark web information that we collect over the last few years. We collect millions of pieces of data every day, which means includes chatter and commerce between threat actors, or places where people make mistakes. People share by mistake secrets and passwords, etc., in code repositories and other areas. So we're looking to identify those mistakes before the hackers are finding them themselves. They're also looking for those mistakes. And of course, once we identify them, we will provide our customers the information about those who as an impactful intelligence, so they can make immediate action to resolve it. The way we do it is by our SaaS software called Argos. It has several layers. I'm not here to talk about all the layers that we're providing, but it includes several modules from threat intelligence to dark web to attack surface, forensic, phishing, brand abuse. These are all different modules within our platform that is actually combined with our expert services. So we have a team of few dozen intelligence experts that know how to do continuously targeted monitoring. They know to talk with threat actors, which what we call virtual human operations, to go undercover and talk in Mandarin or in Russian or in Spanish or in other language with the threat actor in order to understand exactly what they do and how they do it, as well as other deeper investigations. The outcome of this combination of technology and expert services is reduction in business risk. Remember, our goal, our mission statement is to reduce business risk. We do it today in 6 categories: digital footprint, data leaks from different kinds, phishing attacks, brand abuse, productivity and attackware where someone is trying to actually attack you. Now, it's great that we've identified all of that, and we mentioned that the goal is to have action and remediation. So we actually take on ourselves, or we see that as a critical element in the actionable intelligence journey, is to verify there is remediation. The remediation could be done in two main ways. One is by triggering an internal process. So I gave the customer information about a leaked password or password that needs to be resetted, and the remediation is by going to the Active Directory and resetting the password for that employee. This is an internal remediation. The other part of the remediation will be external. So we found a phishing site, we found a social media impersonating profile, and other different types of external problems, source code that is exposed, etc. In this case, we take on our responsibility the remediation, which is called the takedown operation to verify that this threat is being taken down and not being threatened anymore. So I'm going back now with this knowledge that you have into our definition. Again, remember what is the definition of impactful intelligence is the ability to change the behavior in a way that helps to contain, remediate, and reduce the risk. And when we go to the four layers, I would say accurate. We try to achieve accuracy by this combination of man and machine, effective collection, effective analysis, automatic because of the scale, but with a pinch of human activity in order to verify there is the right context and right understanding of the problem. The result, as I presented earlier, is very low false positive rate. Accuracy, one. Second, relevant. There's no point to bombard an organization with information about the risk. We mentioned this before. It's critical to provide things that are in the high impact zone. The way we try to do it is to provide alerts that are based on our customers' assets. So in this case, the discovery of those assets is critical in order to keep the relevance of the alert that's being sent. This is how we achieve the relevancy here. Third layer is actionable. We don't see any point providing a customer with an alert or report. There's no practical recommendations and actions they can do with a very clear laid out process that verifies that this could be taken place. And lastly, it needs to be cost effective. So we believe our customers are very busy. So we try to verify and guarantee an effective risk reduction program under 30 minutes a day. So our customers do not need to have 3 employees only working on our platform in order to help remediate the risk. So we believe cost effective means that as low as 30 minutes a day is really, really enough. And adding that possible organic managed service allows us to provide utilization without significant expert investment on our customer side. So Cyberint, impactful intelligence, I would say check the box on this definition: accurate, relevant, actionable, and cost effective. If I look, maybe to give another perspective, if I look at Gartner and Forrester and others, the way they look at external risk is actually a combination of threat intelligence, attack surface management, and digital risk protection. So when people look at the journey for impactful intelligence, if they look at Gartner, they may look at a combination or several solutions that are covering threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is not the same as impactful intelligence. It's just analyzing the threats. It becomes more impactful when we are combining digital risk protection, especially that is related to the attack surface management. So I would say our point of view is that Cyberint is very well positioned in the core center of all 3 products or categories. And our approach is to provide a complete solution that gives a holistic protection beyond the perimeter. And even if you look at the latest hype cycle by Gartner, Cyberint is, I think, the only vendor that is mentioned in this combination of all 3 of them. Okay, I think one of the last points I want to cover when we talked about impactful intelligence, we need to verify that intelligence has 3 layers in the approach. Again, another check that you should do when you select how you work with impactful intelligence. The first layer will be actionable intelligence, targeted intelligence, intelligence that is related to your specific. This is the most high impact zone. Things that are related to you and have an actionable organization, a specific alert that you need to work on. But impactful intelligence could also come from regional or industry intelligence. This will be a specific alerts that were identified because of issues that happen to your peers or to people in your geography, and they still should influence your security decision because you should make an action not because it is happened to you or a risk or exposure that is occurring to you, but this is exposure to happen to someone else, and you need to validate them. You need to make an action to validate it is not occurring also in your organization to reduce the chance that this will hit you again. So this could be related to your region or to the industry, but it could also be a global threat. So we also find clear value in alerting and reporting on specific global issues that even though have not yet identified maybe in your organization, they could be really, really critical and something you should be aware of and take an action upon. Log4j is a good example that everyone remembers how it influenced almost every organization on the face of the earth. Okay, so impactful intelligence includes also all-around intelligence in order to provide this. So the last topic I would like to mention related to impactful intelligence is how we make impactful intelligence. Impactful intelligence is the result of impactful collection, continuously identifying the organization assets, automatic collection, and identification of new and up-to-date sources. This result in impactful reporting, which should result in reducing time to report, to actually provide comprehensive reporting and contextualize insights and verify there's very little false positive the organization can trust on this reporting. This should lead clearly to impactful remediation. Impactful remediation should be, in most cases, automatic. As we see, as going to see in the next slide, most of the alerts do not require human decisions because the playbook of how to handle this type of alert could be discussed prior to the alert generation, and the playbook should be created ahead of time. And in order to achieve this automation, you need to integrate with other organization technology stack and flows to make it effective. Lastly, impactful intelligence is resulting in impactful influence. The fact that you have impactful intelligence allow you to drive strategic cybersecurity decisions into different departments and, of course, within your own team, and maybe make this cybersecurity not only as a cost center for the organization, it's something that you must do in order to continue to have effective business, but as a business enabler. We actually see few of our customers that make cybersecurity as something they promote and publish and advertise because they believe this is something that actually will attract customers to their business today. So impactful intelligence is the combination of all of those, resulting actually in clearly improved security, in a reduced time to remediation, which is what we want to measure, in reduced operational costs, where you can do something else with this budget, and verifying your resources are optimized, and you can use the always lacking security manpower in order to verify or in places that actually has the highest impact. So I would say almost to summarize this journey so far in how we see impactful intelligence in action. So Argos is the name of our platform. Of course, you can receive the specific high impact zone alert via email. You could consume it through our platform. And if you haven't seen the Argos in action, please feel free to reach out and request a specific demo. You can see it in operational view or in the executive view, which give different perspective and KPIs of how the intelligence help to reduce the risk. Because asset management and asset discovery is something that is very, very wide and very complex, we also have out-of-the-box embedded cloud management, our ability to collect and enrich our asset inventory coming from cloud management platform, verifying this volatile asset circle we saw before is accurate up to date. Combining this with the open, deep, and dark web information, we are going to issue those alerts integrated directly to the ticketing, to the SOAR, or for the theme for triaging. This triaging potentially should be 100% automated with existing playbooks that will use the very clear, actionable, and impactful intelligence alert into a very clear playbook and remediation actions. In some cases, those actions will be towards Cyberint. Hey, please execute the out of the organization remediation, the takedowns, and maybe a specific even investigation request. So this will be part of the playbook going to Cyberint. At the end of the day, leaving very specific and focused activities to the tier 2 or tier 3 in the organization for deeper investigation. The impactful intelligence would also feed IOCs into seeing for a smarter event correlation and other security tools to verify that all the knowledge we have on the global threat is also being used in the day-to-day operation, again, automated. It should feed asset management platform in order to verify the full asset information as we see from the outside and enriching this perspective effectively. We want to verify the different vulnerability scanners. First, know which asset to scan. This is not something that is easy to feed, and of course, have the right CVE enrichment in order to verify and prioritize out of the thousands of vulnerabilities being identified in any organization, which one actually are being weaponized and are actually being used by threat actors. And again, this is the high impact zone, the combination between the asset and the risk, also in this case of the vulnerability aspect. So this is how we see the combination, the finalization of impactful intelligence in action. Just before I go to questions, and feel free to write them in our Q&A section, I want to summarize and suggest the key takeaways from this session today. So from my perspective, not all intelligence is impactful intelligence, and you can validate this using those four elements in the definition. It needs to be accurate, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be actionable, and it needs to be cost effective. Otherwise, maybe there's no real value of it. Remember the three layers. If it is not impactful, there's no reason to receive those analyses. And in order to achieve it, you need to have a continuous combined attack surface discovery with a very deep threat intelligence coverage. Otherwise, you may get intelligence on things that are not related to you, or misidentification of some of the assets that are critical to be analyzed. Deep understanding in three intelligence layers. We talked about this targeted, regional, industry, and the global intelligence. And this is in many times being achieved by the combination of human analysis with machine learning. And finally, impactful intelligence should thrive in your maturity process towards automatic remediation where possible. So even in weekends and Christmas, which is upcoming, or any other holiday, and people are not in full attention, the remediation should take place, even if there's no one in the office, because the hackers, of course, are using those times. So impactful intelligence should allow you to automate your remediation time, your remediation where possible. So with this, I really want to thank you for listening for this session, and maybe leave the floor for any questions that are coming from the audience. And maybe I'll present one of the questions that I received here. And it is relating to how you identify assets, how you know what are the organizational assets. And I would say it's a very tough question to answer. I can tell you how we are doing. We are monitoring continuously the entire internet in a way, and trying to map which IPs are being used by which domains, analyzing domain registrations and DNS data and certificate issues, etc. And certificate issued certificate, and try to combine it in a I would say in a big data solution in order to map the entire internet. So when someone asks us a question, what are my assets, we can very clearly go and look at this huge graph that we collected and navigate within this graph to take all the assets that are related to you. So from one domain, find another domain, another IP, another cloud asset, and by that identify those assets. So I hope I answered the question. Another question relates to what are the sources and what is darknet today? Is darknet something real? So I would say darknet is something very real. If you want to go through a quick darknet tour, either go to one of our previous webinar, I think a great one made by Jacob, or feel free to shoot us an email or a request, and we can take you live and see even if your organization you mentioned is a darknet. And for me, darknet is not just those onions or marketplaces. It's also wherever threat actors are discussing and commercing, and a lot today is done in Discord and much even more in Telegram. And of course, you need to verify those are being tracked in an effective way. So I hope I answer again this question. I don't see other questions at this point, so I want to say thank you very much for taking a break in your day and attending a Cyberint session about the journey to threat to impactful intelligence. I hope it was valuable and you could take some key takeaway from that. Looking forward to see you in our next webinar. Thank you. Have a really, really great day.
Thank you, Chai, for this illuminating session. As I mentioned, we'll send the webinar in a couple of days. Have a great day.